Everybody, welcome to the Shore Show. The Shore Show is your show where I take viewers down in the chat, I bring them to the Shore House, have them sit on the big red comfy couch, and we get to know everybody a little bit better. My guest this week is DrWhiteCat. DrWhiteCat's a good friend of mine, fellow streamer. I'm a moderator on his stream, but we've known each other for a long time, and he spent a lot of mornings hanging out in DrWhiteCat stream. So welcome, DrWhiteCat. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Again, I just worked today, and then I've been hanging out, played some Speedstorm this afternoon, and then got in and started watching your stream.
Yep, and then got sucked right back into the Speedstorm again. It was a lot of fun playing. That beast is something else. Do you enjoy the beast?
Oh yeah, I thought that was appropriate since I don't think they have a cat character, though. If they introduced Mally O'Malley from the Aristocats, I think that would be a good
There you go.
to have in.
Any friend of John who is a friend of the Shore House, sure. Corrigan has 4 cats. Corrigan has a bunch of cats. And then Blue was telling me earlier she tried to give her cat a bath and it cut her up pretty bad. She might need a real doctor. But very on brand.
I mean, I am a real doctor.
A people doctor.
Yes. But
So-
real doctors treat more than one species.
That's true. It's a lot more difficult. We're going to get in on a lot of that, DrWhiteCat. When we first met through Streamers United. Am I right? That wonderful Discord server for small streamers out there. And you jumped in there. How did you find out about Streamers United, DrWhiteCat?
So I got into Streamers United via Sardor.
Oh, yeah, Sardor. Good friend of the stream.
Yeah, good guy. Because I started popping into his streams. I don't remember. It was shortly after I started to stream, and then after I'd been in there for a little bit, he was like, "Hey, do you want to be involved in this other Discord?" And I was like, "Sure." And then the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fantastic. It's a great Discord, guys. If you're out there, Streamers United. Wonderful Discord. You belong to that Discord, you get a bunch of streamers in there. A bunch of different small streamers in there. And it really, really is great for people, who, just getting starting out, wanting to build a community. Sardor is awesome. Sardor is the best. Nick667. Thank you, buddy. Good to see you. But yeah, and it went on from there. How long have you been doing the Twitch thing, DrWhiteCat?
Let's see. I think it was shortly after I moved to the Philly area, so that would have been like April. Oh, I think that was like the summer of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. So that came about because some friends of mine that I'd been playing Sea of Thieves with, we got onto a Minecraft modded server together, and then we were like, hey, one of us should stream it, and I was like, I'll do it. And then after that, I was like, oh, this is enjoyable, and gradually just started building from there.
And
so
it did.
Technically, the first stream I ever did was actually in 2020, and it was to promote my own book. It was just a stream of me just trying to write the sequel and doing some writing.
So that was neat. You started out streaming the book.
Yes. So technically, my first 3 ever follows were actually people that watched me just write a book.
I've seen a lot of different kinds of streams, DrWhiteCat. It might be actually really interesting now that I think about it. But that's where I found you. I came into your streams. I saw you on Streamers United. I went in there. You were playing Sea of Thieves. You were playing Minecraft. And you were playing in the early morning. And that's what I like. I like that early morning vibe. The Sea of Thieves, the Minecraft. It was very soothing. It was very relaxing. And I really, really enjoyed your streams. It turned into a wonderful relationship. Now, with Streamers United and the streaming tree at the Shore House, you've branched out, expanded your community so much. Tell me about some of the special people that you've met along the way.
So some people that I've met along the way via streaming to run into. We all know Sir Dunk. There's Matadillo, who's a streamer who followed me shortly before I got affiliate. Who was playing when I was playing a couple streams of Planet Zoo.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Of course, there's Ruby Chan, who's someone that plays a lot of. Currently, she's playing Legend of Zelda, just like Pink Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say a lot of people that I'd say most people I know through the streaming tree of people that I'm popping into regularly. There's also a couple smaller people that have popped up recently, like uh, KCat8 and GamerCat Alpha, both of which who came to the stream solely because we all have cat in our name.
Yeah, I got to know K-Cat. Really, really great person there.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's not even one of the coolest things that you do. Like I said, there's a lot to unpack with Dr. WhiteCat. A lot going on. Strongheart wants to hear about the book. We're definitely going to hit the book. First, I want to ask you, let's lead into it this way. How did you get your name, Dr. WhiteCat?
All right. So, Dr. WhiteCat comes from two things. One, it comes from my cat Ghost, who, if you're ever on my stream, you'll see Ghost. In fact, that's what most of my that's what my original channel emotes all are. They're just pictures of Ghost.
I did all my pets too.
Yeah. So she is a white cat. So there's the cat. Will we see Ghost depends on if she gets within arm's reach of me. Which, considering she's gotten used to whenever the lights turn on my camera, that most likely I'm gonna try to grab her at some point. And then the other part of the doctor part comes from me actually having the rights to call myself doctor since I'm a veterinarian.
Absolutely. Dr. WhiteCat is a legit doctor, a veterinarian, one of our favorite doctors because the doctors that take care of our little ones. I saw Tripod out there. Hey, Tripod, how you doing? Tripod works at a animal care facility as well. So we do. It's a great profession. Let's go back. I love the origin stories. I want to find out that journey that got you into veterinary medicine. But first, what was it like growing up, Dr. WhiteCat? You said you originally moved to the Philadelphia area. Where did you grow up?
So I'm originally from the Delmarva Peninsula, and I'm from the Virginia part of the Delmarva Peninsula. So I'm from So if you look at a map of Maryland, you'll see that there are two counties of Virginia that stick off of it over on the east side of the state. And that's where I'm from, the eastern shore of Virginia, which unfortunately also gets left off of most Virginia maps, and not uncommonly people just assume that that's part of Maryland. Even when I was in college at Virginia Tech, I ran into people that had literally never heard of the eastern shore of Virginia, including people that are from Virginia Beach, which is like an hour away, and at the very tip of the peninsula is a bridge called the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel.
Oh, yeah.
And it attaches to Virginia Beach. And people in Virginia Beach had never heard of what the other end of the bridge connected to.
It just kept going and going and going and going. I know that bridge well.
Yes, it's considered one of the engineering marvels too, because it's one of the few bridges that has dual spans and 3 separate tunnels over the course of crossing an entire body of water.
It is. It's something to see. It's something to experience for sure. So you grew up in the Virginia area. Ironically, a shore person, which must be why we became such great friends.
Yes.
But and you went to college. Was that undergrad? You went to Virginia Tech?
Yes, that was undergrad. Undergrad, I was Virginia Tech. I was an animal and poultry sciences major, which in orientation they had to point out that the reason why it's called animal and poultry sciences isn't because they don't consider poultry to be an animal. It's because those used to be separate departments.
Right, you have to include the chickens, right? Because if you don't have chickens, there you go, Virginia Tech, Sparty. Sparty, a big Virginia Tech fan.
Yes, Hokie High.
So there, after that, let's see. At this point, you had obviously made the decision that you wanted to pursue veterinary medicine. Was there an event that happened when you were growing up, a special pet or something like that, that kind of steered you in that direction for a career?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I mean, I've always loved animals, but when I was a kid, I had it in my head that I would be a zoologist, kind of like the Kratt brothers or Jeff Corwin or Jack Hanna.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Uh, yeah, and then around 7th grade, my family dog had a litter of puppies, which no good story could start. Then yeah, of course the story had to involve puppies.
Of course.
And that she had a litter of 11 puppies, and then then they got parvo, which parvo is a very detrimental virus that mostly targets the bone marrow and the intestines. So it rapidly leads to death, unfortunately. And I had a moment where I was while we were rushing the puppies to the local animal hospital, and they were literally dying in my arms, and I was like, I got to do something. I want to do something about this.
Yeah.
And I was also very confident in my intelligence because, of course, I had been labeled as one of the talented and gifted people, which now leads to everyone's anxiety if they were ever a talented and gifted person.
Right, just pile it on.
So past that point, I was all right. I'm going to be a veterinarian. And then in high school, during my driving classes, because at my high school, instead of going off to like a driving school, they just have your driver's ed is in the classroom, and the one gym teacher is a certified driving instructor. So
wait a minute, you had driving ed classes from the gym teacher, and he taught you in the gym.
He would teach in the gym. He had like this outdoor driving module simulator thingy from like the 70s that he had to turn off a setting because it could not register putting a car in park for whatever reason. It would only let you start the car from neutral. So you had to turn off that as an error in the tests when we would take those. And then during the school year, when we were working on getting our driver's license, we were able to take classes. We were able to basically get out of one of our regularly scheduled classes to go driving with him. He also happened to be the wrestling coach. And
okay, fair.
Both of my brothers had wrestled. My sister had been a statistician for the wrestling team, and I had done like the wrestling club, but by the time I got to high school, I didn't feel like doing wrestling anymore. So, but during those driving days, we would chat. We were just chatting to each other, and I mentioned I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then a few weeks later, I was at the local animal hospital with my mom with one of our dogs, and the head vet walks in. He's like, "Hey, do you know Brian Harmon?" I was like, "Yeah, he's the wrestling coach at Northampton." He's like, "He told me you want to be a veterinarian." I'm like, "Yes," and he just handed me an application. He was like, "Here, work for us and see how you like it."
Wow, that's incredible.
So I saw Kino asked about advice about becoming a veterinarian. I would say one of the most important things you can do in becoming a veterinarian, or at least making the decision to become one, is you've got to work around a veterinary clinic. So you've got an actual idea of what it is you're going to be doing on a daily basis. And as sad as it sounds, you need to sit in on a euthanasia.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is probably one of the most important things that someone considering being a veterinarian should do, because you have to get comfortable with death, unfortunately. It's unfortunately just a part of the job that you're going to experience death, and you eventually just kind of have to be okay with the idea that sometimes mistakes will happen, and you may have missed something, and a patient will die, or that or that it's just out of your control. And sometimes the best thing for an animal is, unfortunately, euthanasia, as much as that's a bittersweet thing. But, but yeah, working around an animal hospital is probably the best advice I could ever give someone planning to become a veterinarian, and trying to get as much experience with animals as you can, because that actually is something that the vet school application wants to see.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it asks you for what is your experience with small animal, what's your experience with large animal, do you have experience with exotic animals, which an exotic animal more or less classifies as any animal that you wouldn't think about being on a farm.
Okay.
So if you eat it, ride it, or it's a cat or dog, it is most likely not an exotic. If it's any other animal, that it is.
So if you had like an alligator or a tiger.
Yeah, so all your birds, all your reptiles, all of your amphibians, those all classify as exotic animal. Well, I guess except for poultry. Except for turkey.
Poultry's always got to be on its own.
Chickens.
Right.
And then all your small rodents, like your small rodents and your rabbits, ferrets, things of that nature that you wouldn't think about eating or riding. Those are classified technically as exotic. When I went to Virginia Tech and started in the animal sciences major, I didn't actually know what animal sciences was. I just was like, oh, that sounds like the right thing.
Right.
And then it turns out that animal sciences is the science of raising tasty animals and horses.
And horses. But not tasty horses.
Well, it depends on where you live, unfortunately.
That's fair.
Would Bigfoot be an exotic? Probably. He would classify as a non-human primate.
Non-human primate. That definitely counts. Now, you mentioned Virginia Tech. Now, at this point, you're starting to get serious. You're starting to think about postgraduate school. I hear a lot about veterinary school. I hear veterinary school is super competitive. It's super expensive. It's super, super difficult because now you have to learn all the things for all the animals. And it is a big undertaking. And that's why these people that are in veterinary medicine are so dedicated because of the work you have to do to get through there. Tell me a little bit about your vet school experience.
So, yes. So just to touch on, it's very difficult to get into vet school. If I remember right, I think it was 2017 was last time I actually looked at the figure. For every applicant that there was to a vet school in the United States, there was a quarter of a seat available. So basically, they had 4 times as many applicants as they had seats, because in the United States, there's, last I checked, 24 vet schools in the entirety of the United States.
There's not a lot of seats.
No, as opposed to the medical schools, which range in the thousands. So statistically, it's harder to get into vet school than it is to get into medical school, and that is just the beginning of the vet versus med debate. If you ever go to a school that has both a veterinary school and a human medical school, and which I did, I actually went to St. George's University, which is in Grenada. It is accredited by the American Veterinary Medical Association. And it's been accredited since 2011, I believe.
And a beautiful country. So if you're going to have to go overseas, hey, it's not a bad choice.
No, it was a lovely place. Definitely the biggest focus of the country. One of their biggest things is that they want to appeal to tourists and to students, because that's how they get the most people involved. And in the majority of my vet school class was Americans. There was a handful of Canadians. I think 3 or 4 people from the UK, someone from Sweden, and a guy from India.
That's awesome. And then Luis says his cousin went to that school, and she now practices in Chicago. So it must have a great reputation. How did you find out about it?
So I found out about it through the pre-veterinary club at Virginia Tech,
Mm.
because they would have people come in and they'd present, and they were really trying to sell you on the Caribbean schools, because for the most part, a lot of people tend to look down and poo-poo people that went to a Caribbean school for their degree.
But it's really nice there.
It is, but people think, well, why couldn't you get into a U.S. school?
Yeah, we talked about that. There's not enough chairs.
Yeah, because there are 4 times as many people applying as there are classes. I had applied to Virginia Tech, or Virginia Maryland College of Veterinary Medicine, since it is a dual ownership between Virginia Tech and the University of Maryland. And then I also applied to Auburn, which Auburn is in Alabama, and that school is the school that the veterinarians that I worked with at the local animal hospital had gone to. So I felt I was kind of obligated to apply there, and kind of solidarity with them. And I'm like, hey, these were good people. I'll support the same place that they went.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, but the first, like you would expect, the first part of, more or less the first year or 2 of vet school is all just classroom learning, so you have to learn the anatomy and the physiology of
Everything.
pretty much every animal, give or take. I mean, it isn't like you're going through all the thousands upon thousands of species, but you're at least going through through dogs, cats, horses, ruminant animals, which would be cattle and sheep and goats. We also did fish, which I impressed the anatomy professor because I perfectly filleted my fish. Which I grew up on a peninsula where I would fish all the time. Of course, I know how to fillet one.
Right.
But
no, that's awesome. And
and then around the 3rd year of vet school is when you start doing junior surgery lab, so that was the first time that I got to do surgery, and it was spaying and neutering, which is, considered one of the most basic skills that a practicing veterinarian should be able to do. And also, a spay is a really good procedure for learning open abdominal procedures, because in order to spay an animal to remove the ovaries and the uterus, you have to actually cut open the abdomen and, reach inside and feel things around. Sparty's asking if I watch vet shows. I used to, and I don't anymore. I watched them when I was in vet school. And I would sit there and try to challenge myself with all the cases to see if I could guess the diagnosis, which I was pretty decent at. But nowadays, well, partially because I don't watch TV anymore. I watch streaming services. I watch stuff online, like, the ShoreShow.
Absolutely.
And also it's hard to not kind of look at other veterinarians as they practice and kind of mentally critique, or like, I would have done that differently, because for one reason or another, there are certain veterinary shows that most veterinarians kind of shy away from, but I won't name them because I think that would be unprofessional of me to directly name veterinarians that I would critique the worst. But
yeah, Barstool wants to know if you can fillet the horse. You can fillet the fish. Can you fillet the horse?
I can't, because I didn't take meat sciences. I can vaguely grade beef.
There you go. That's a talent.
But it's also been, good God, I graduated, and it's been 11 years since I've had to grade beef. Assuming that I was taking one of the beef management courses my last year in undergrad.
This sounds like a course that Mickey would love to take, beef management. I'll tell you, Sparty, you know what my favorite vet show is? I'll tell you what my favorite vet show is, Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul's the vet that's out in the farm somewhere, you know what I mean? He's like in, and he goes around to all the different farms and he takes care of their horses and cows. No matter what ailment that this animal suffers from, Dr. Paul has the same answer. He puts a trash bag on his arm and then he goes all the way up to his shoulder in the back of the animal. It's something you can see. He pulls out the sickness, and then they're healthy. It's an amazing show.
So we probably saw him do is actually put on what's called a rectal sleeve, which a rectal sleeve is a plastic glove that goes all the way up to your shoulder.
Right.
And at certain vet schools at graduation, anyone that plans to become a large animal vet will inflate those and walk around with them to show that these are the large animal vets, and the small animal vets will walk around with just a regular hand glove.
Oh, and they had the big rectal sleeve. That's got to be a chat command! ! Rectal sleeve.
Yeah, I had to learn that. I had to learn that skill as well. I'm not good at it because I haven't had to do it in years.
No, you didn't even get to start doing surgery for the 3rd year. How long does vet school typically last for a person?
So vet school lasts 4 years. Usually it's the first 3 years are your kind of classroom learning, and then the 4th year is your clinical year. Since the country of Grenada is the size of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and has a 40% unemployment rate, it does not have the caseload for clinical training, so instead, St. George's as well as Ross, which Ross is on St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Matthew's Vet School, which I don't remember which island that's on, but that's also a Caribbean school.
Okay.
All those schools have contracts with the schools in the United States, Canada, and then there's a couple that they have contracts with in Europe and I think Australia. I think Murdoch. I think it's Murdoch University. Has a vet school, but anyway, where they will send a handful of students from each of their classes to each of those schools. So for whatever reason, University of Florida decided to take 9 people from our school, from my class, which is bizarrely high. And yeah, so I was at University of Florida, which worked out well for me because they had a integrative medicine program or a rotation. And integrative medicine kind of boils together all the, not to say the kind of sideline types of medicine, but like your less traditional medicine styles, like acupuncture, ultrasound therapy, spinal manipulation, which is the veterinary version of chiropractics.
Okay.
Because technically, chiropractics is a protected term that only applies to human medicine. But I'm also sure that they're not really going to go after someone if they say that they do veterinary chiropractic, because people actually understand what that is, as opposed to, oh yeah, I do spinal manipulations.
Yeah,
herbal
people
medicine.
Understand the word, so you use it to explain it.
And it also fits together some of the things for physical rehab. So that was something I was interested in. I ended up not actually pursuing that, though I had been looking into getting trained as a certified veterinary acupuncturist, because it does have some studies to support it being useful predominantly in musculoskeletal disease. So things like arthritis, injuries, joint problems. So in all of those locations, it tends to be fairly useful. I'm more skeptical when it comes to using it to treat other conditions.
Right, it's not a cure-all.
But, yeah, and also depending on which school you go to for your your acupuncture certification, and who you're talking to, you might get a different way of explaining how it works. because there are some programs, some veterinarians that'll just double down on the Eastern description of chi theory, but then there are other people that'll go into the discussion through a more Western approach of the neuromuscular physiology. But
sure, it's amazing because there was all these cultural differences. I remember when my wife, when she was working, she met a veterinarian who was trained in the USSR. Like before the fall, he was trained in communist Russia to be a veterinarian, and that's where he went to vet school.
Right.
He wound up over here. He was working in New Jersey, and boy, did that guy have some stories because he learned how to do everything completely different. And one of his favorite things to do is take some of the young people over and say, "You want to show you something?" And it would be the same way. He could get to the same road just through a different method. And that's what's great about meeting people from all over the world. It sounds like that education really prepared you for that. When you finished up vet school, where did you wind up?
So when I first finished up vet school, I actually was practicing at I was practicing in what's called Hagerstown, Maryland.
So close to home.
What was that?
So close to home.
Sort of. I mean, Hagerstown, Maryland is like 45 minutes north of DC. It's kind of in central Maryland, and then but for whatever reason they just kind of didn't like me, so I was fired from that first position after 6 weeks, but the explanation I was given was that I just acted too much like a new veterinarian, and I was like, you guys hired me out of vet school,
right?
Of course I act like a new veterinarian. They're like, oh, but we've got no problem with your medicine. Your medicine's on point. but so I just said, screw you guys. Yep. And then I went and started practicing in Salisbury, Maryland, which Salisbury, Maryland is on the eastern shore of Maryland. So that was only like an hour away. The head vet there knew the veterinarian that I'd worked for because they were part of the same corporate entity. Which is National Veterinary Associates.
Okay.
And because they were only an hour away from each other, they knew each other. They were in the same district. They talked. So when he saw my application, he actually spoke to Dr. Charlie Cameron, who was the head vet at the place where I worked in high school, about me. And he before he even gave me the phone interview, and that's how he started his phone interview. He was like, I talked to Charlie Cameron about you. He seems to like you, so I'm going to give you a chance. And then that's where I was practicing for a couple years, for the first four years or so, from 2016 to 2020.
That's a good run. Everybody's fascinated with it.
2021.
Mickey wants to know if you get free vet care for your pets. I think he's trying to work an angle. Mickey loves a bargain.
Do my own pets get free vet care? Technically, no. My clinic doesn't want me to do that, but I have managed to finagle it every time I've needed to bring her in for stuff, for her vaccines and her blood work, because my clinic is a externship site.
Ooh.
Which externships are where a vet student can go to the clinic to kind of learn in practice how to be a veterinarian. It's a learning experience for them. And every time the last 2 years that Ghost has needed her annual exam, has coincided with right when we had a vet student. So I was like, vet student, here's a patient for you. I want you to examine her, take her blood, get a urine sample, and tell me all of the abnormalities, and I can tell you at least two. I can tell you at least three that I want you to pick up on, but I won't tell you what they are until you actually finish your exam. And for the most part, they tend to pick up on it, which is that she has a constantly tearing left eye, and that's most likely due to a chronic herpes infection.
Okay. Yeah, this sounds like an angle Mickey would work. Happens to coincide.
Yes, and then she also she has a little bit of dental disease,
Mm-hmm.
and she is declawed as much as I regret doing it. Declawing is something that we've been trying that the veterinary community has been getting away from, because most people don't realize that the actual procedure involves amputations.
Right.
It's removing the last bone of every single digit of every toe. So I typically have tried to tell people, like, do you watch Game of Thrones? And if they have, like, do you know Sir Davos?
Right.
Like, because Sir Davos had the last bone of every finger on his hand cut off, and that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, you think of
But
your fingernail, right? It's not the tip of your fingernail, it's the base of your fingernail. So you're going below that.
It's the entire first bone.
Oof.
Yes. So because the place where the area that the claw kind of comes out of originates from is connected to the bone, so you have to actually remove the whole bone in order to remove the entire claw. If you do it wrong, which I did because she was the first cat ever declawed, they can regrow. They can kind of regrow little bits of claw, and it's not handy. The reason that I declawed her was because the apartment that I was living in required all cats living there to be declawed. And at the time, she was just some little feral ragamuffin living at the clinic. And I sat there having myself a good old ethical dilemma of, is it worse for her to be homeless, or is it worse for me to declaw her? And in my head, I was like, well, I guess it's worse for her to be homeless. And if I'm going to be expected at this clinic to declaw cats, I should at least learn how to do it. So
that's great.
So
and like I said,
went ahead and did it. I mean, I could feel a little bit vindicated that it was a learning experience, which some people do kind of learn some of their procedures for the first time on pets, usually in vet school. I had a classmate who had to unfortunately learn a forelimb amputation on her own dog because her dog got a tumor of the bone in his front leg, and so that was diagnosed in vet school at the clinic, and so she basically was like, hey, can I be involved and learn how to do the surgery on my own dog? So
save you some money there, too. Mickey loves the idea. Now, that leads into Corrigan's question. Corrigan says, is it a conflict of conduct to date your patients? But as anybody who's worked in a vet will know that you get inundated with these pets that need homes, right? So, like I said, that's how you kind of got Ghost. You found a little ragamuffin. You took him home. You gave him a home and made him happy. So, yeah, they encourage you to take home someone when they need to.
But, well, I mean, dating the patients, or do you mean dating clients?
Oh, there you go.
Because the patients
that's
are
not
animals,
a client,
and I don't condone that. But the clients, I will say I've never dated a client that was. Well, I've never dated a client that was a client before I dated them. I have on two separate occasions dated someone who then subsequently became a client because they're dating me.
Okay, so that's a good way to get customers, right?
Sure, let's go with that. My current girlfriend, her dog is very anxious at the veterinarian usually, but her dog loves the hell out of me. So, like, he's anxious to the point that when in order to even go to a vet, he has to take oral sedatives.
Okay.
And he still needs to wear a muzzle so that he doesn't bite people. So the thought was, well, if the dog really likes me, is he going to be better for his appointment? And he was. He was still clearly nervous, but he recognized me, and he was like, okay, you're familiar to me. I'll let you do things. So I got to do the entire exam. I got to take a blood sample. I gave him his vaccines, but he did put his foot down, so to speak, when it came to trimming his nails.
Oh yeah, they
So
don't
I
like that.
still, yeah, he's not down with that. So, but no, I've never dated a patient, Corrigan. I've just owned one.
There you go. There you go. Now you said that job over in Maryland in Salisbury that took you up to 2020. Is that where you went changed to your current position?
Yes, yeah, I was it. For what I'm not quite sure what exactly it was, but I just was not feeling happy anymore in Salisbury. There was it could have related to a really bad breakup I had where basically everything was reminding me of that person because we had spent all this time together and kind of explored a lot of parts of Salisbury, so everything kind of brought that to mind. It could have also been that over time the clinic had been the clinic culture had changed to a point where it's becoming more uh, disruptive to me in my general well-being and mental health. So I left. So I left. I mean, I talked to the head vet. I'm like, hey, look, Mike, I hate to do this to you, but I can't. I just don't feel happy in Salisbury anymore. Like I feel like I need to move. So and he was okay with it. I mean, he had me talk to the corporate to his higher up manager because we're owned by corporate, and then I got to interview in this area because I said that the Philadelphia area, the DC area, and the Baltimore area would be areas I'd be interested in moving to because I don't want to move around too much.
Right.
I didn't want to move too far away from my family. My grandmother and my parents' family are all in Western Pennsylvania, and then my immediate family, my brothers, my sister, my mom, my stepdad all live in Virginia. So I didn't want to go, halfway across the country, but I wanted to be in an area that would still be close, and I wanted to be a little bit more city adjacent.
There you go.
I feel like I really wouldn't do well in a city environment, but outside of the city is just fine. And then Louis looks like Luis and Sparty both asked questions about euthanasia. Uh, so euthanasia can be a very difficult decision for people to come to. Uh, there are websites which I don't. Oh, I don't think I have the ability to post links in your chat, but I'll send you the link.
Yeah.
I'll send you a couple links to Lap of Love. Has a Lap of Love is uh, it's a it's a veterinary service that pretty much just does euthanasia services on an at-home basis, but they do have on their website a lot of really good resources that you can look at. They can look into with regards to trying to decide if it's how much your pet's quality of life is decreased.
Yeah, I
And
know.
they've
One of
got
our friends, Pink Ranger
yeah.
Gamer, just went through a really hard time with their dog Lion. And our
Yes.
thoughts and
Yeah.
prayers
I
are always
actually,
with Pink.
yeah, I sent her the little scales. Basically, they're on the website. A they have one as a questionnaire that basically goes through and has you answer questions about your pet in general, and they're questions. The questions like the animal's desire to be with the family has changed. They enjoy their normal play activities. Their appetite's the same. Their ability to walk around and move. And then you kind of are answering on like a scale of 0 to 2.
Okay.
Yeah, on a scale of 0 to 2,
It is or it
all
isn't.
these little questions, and then at the end it gives you a little score that gives you an idea of how much your animal's quality of life has been affected by whatever is going on with them. And so it kind of creates a little bit of an objective way of measuring something that's very emotional. Their scale also also has an additional section that is more or less how is you and your family's quality of life affected by what's going on with your pet, because the bond between the family and the animal is a very important part of how the animal's living, how you're living. I mean, you can't ignore that. You can't ignore the human animal bond. It's a very powerful thing. So yeah.
Right.
So
So now, can you?
anytime someone comes in with an animal that they have questions about quality of life, I always do an exam on them if this is the first time we're talking about quality of life with them. We just kind of listen to things, and I always try to give people a not euthanasia option,
Right.
even if I am well on the camp of euthanasia is a very reasonable thing, and I always tell people that like euthanasia is reasonable. You're not wrong to be thinking about this, because in many cases, what people really want is kind of to be told that they're not wrong. They want to know that they aren't making a bad decision in trying to euthanize an animal. And by not euthanasia option, I always give it so that they don't feel like they're trapped. Like there are other options, but I do try to be realistic with them. Like, yes, we can do this or that, and it might be helpful, might keep them comfortable for such and such length of time. I'm being vague because it depends on what the scenario is, but most cases, it's very unlikely that I would ever tell someone, no, I don't think that's a good idea to be euthanizing your animal. It's because that's not what anyone needs to hear. No one needs to feel judged. I can only think of one time ever that I've told someone that I would not euthanize their animal, and it was at that first job in Hagerstown, and it was because the animal, what they wanted to euthanize the animal over was a condition that was literally going to resolve itself.
Right.
Because the dog came in for what's called idiopathic vestibular disease, which basically is a condition that older dogs especially get, where their inner ear kind of just goes out of whack and they lose balance for a few days. It's very similar to vertigo, but
Right, but it kind of looks like a
resolves.
stroke too. So you think, oh my gosh, my dog's this and that,
Yes,
and it
a
resolves
lot of people
itself.
freak out about it, and I explained to him what was going on. I'm like, oh, it looks like he actually just has vestibular syndrome. Vestibular syndrome is a condition that resolves in like 3 to 5 days. Within a week, she'll be back to normal, and I literally have to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, doing nothing, she's going to resolve in a couple days. Like, and this is true in, I'll say 90%, 95% of cases that have this presentation. It resolves. Like, there's no need to make an irreversible decision. And that client was livid with me and was like, if you're not going to euthanize him, bring me someone who will. And then I went to one of the other veterinarians and I told them what was going on, and they agreed with me that I was making a reasonable ethical I had a reasonable ethical quandary about euthanizing this dog, but that I should just go do it anyway. And I was like, what? I was like, well, if you talk to the head vet, he would just tell you the same. And I'm like, that's pretty shitty.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing it anyway. And of course, the client also was not pleased with me, would not ever want to see me again. Yeah.
Okay, I quit.
Would
They
not want to
fired you
see me
anyway.
again,
They fired
so-
you anyway, right? Who wants to
Yeah, they
work at
fired
that
me
place?
anyway. It was unrelated to that, but
Mhm.
they fired me anyway, so screw them. I have gone back and looked, and they got bought out by corporate after they did a big expansion. They did a huge expansion, and of their facilities. They hired new vets, and then basically the entire clinic just burnt to the ground, and they had to sell to a corporate. So there's a little part of me that is a bit
Glad you got out of there when you
it's
did.
a good bit of Schadenfreude out of that.
Now, Sparty posted the link in chat there. Thank you so much, Sparty. One of the excellent mods here at the ShoreHouse. The lap of love, the quality of life assessment, if you guys want to get in on that. One of the things that Luis mentioned was self-care. DrWhiteCat, you spoke very eloquently over in my Discord for mental health awareness about some of the mental health struggles, some of the stress that's associated with your profession, things like a high suicide rate, depression, and things like that. What are some of the things that you do to kind of blow off steam, to kind of decompress after having to deal with stuff like that all day?
So the main way that I decompress after work is usually coming home. If it's a real bad, I don't want this to get taken the wrong way. Usually, if I have a bad day, I have a drink.
You're not alone.
I have a drink to relax, and then oftentimes I'll either just sit and veg out on the sofa, sit and veg out in front of the computer, and watch YouTube, watch Twitch, or bust out a video game, so that I can just break myself away from into a new reality. Sometimes if I'm hanging out with my girlfriend, I'll sit there, and if it's really getting on my mind, I'll sit there and I'll just vent and talk to her about it, just to get it out of there. I had a real tough week 2 weeks ago, where it seemed like every single day there was some sort of fire to put out, which that weighed really heavily on me, and actually called up contacted my therapist, and I was like, "Hey, can we schedule an appointment just for me to talk and let this all out and talk everything through?" Because it was a lot of stuff that I really didn't want to unload on my partner, because it is difficult to have I know how difficult it is to have someone unloading all of their trauma onto you, because oftentimes I end up getting a lot of that at work, because people are concerned about their animals. They're like, "Oh, I feel so bad about this and that," and so it's a tough job. There's a lot of you get into a lot of self-doubt, because did you make the right decision on this one case? Could you have done something differently? People being upset because their animal died, and even just having times where things are going haywire and you feel like everything's out of control. Having animals acutely, need to get CPR. That was actually one of the things that happened during that bad week, is that a client came in, never saw them before. Their cat was having some difficulty breathing, and I had a suspicion that I knew what was going on, just based on how the cat was acting. Especially when I knew that she was feeling like crap, because she was what I typically record in the record as uncharacteristically complacent.
Okay.
Which means it's an animal that usually is trying to bite your face off, or a cat that's all claws and teeth, hissing, swatting, and then you come in and the cat is just calmly sitting there, and you can do a full exam. Like, that doesn't. And I'm just like, that doesn't bode well, because if they aren't fighting me like this, and they normally would be trying to tear my skin off, they're probably getting ready to have something terrible happen, and ended up that she had a chest full of fluid.
Okay.
So I took X-rays to confirm that was my diagnosis, and then I just told the technician to hold on to her and keep her in the treatment area, where we could put her in an oxygen cage if needed, and also because chances are I would potentially have to be starting treatment. Because the first part of treating that is immediately to drain the chest.
Sure.
get that fluid out so that they can breathe. And then in the process of me walking away to grab an iPad to show the client the X-rays, the cat went into respiratory arrest and stopped breathing. So then I had to abruptly try to take care of the animal. But luckily, one of my coworkers, she was about to leave and took over for me so that I could talk to the owner. And then in talking to the owner, I had to be like, hey, couple of things. Really quickly, I hate to do this all very rapidly, but this is an urgent scenario. She stopped breathing. What do you want to do? The reason she stopped breathing is because her chest is full of fluid. There's nothing good that causes this. It's pretty much in almost every case, it's something end stage. So either really bad either the cat's in heart failure, the cat has cancer, the cat has something wrong with the liver where they're not producing enough proteins. No matter what, it's bad. But she's also, do you want me to continue trying to, do you want me or my, in this case, technically my coworker, to continue to treat your animal? Which, of course, at the time, the owner just had all of this information unloaded on her, and she couldn't really kind of form the sentence or form a thought. And so I was like, all right, do you want a couple minutes to think about it while I go check on her, see how she's doing? And I noticed that, and as I was walking out, I grabbed one of the other technicians. I'm like, can you make sure we need to replace the tissues that are in that room? I got to get upstairs real quick. And I took care of things. And then after she'd had a couple minutes to calm down and relax, process everything, then she was able to say, yes, we can let her go. 'Cause the cat had started to breathe again on her own, but she was barely moving, unresponsive. So yeah, you get into scenarios like that where you're in a scenario where it's an emergency. You need an answer right now, and you don't want to completely ruin someone's day, but you have to.
Right, and this is a person you just met hours ago.
Yeah, and I think I said this earlier in Dunk's chat. I would rather give the right diagnosis and it be bad than to give the wrong diagnosis and say that the diagnosis is good. Or I'd rather say a correct bad diagnosis than a wrong good diagnosis.
Right, false hope and everything like that.
Yes, because then people have a false hope, and it's always important that I think people need to know. Oops.
I know, Cora. I know. So he says the deal with it.
Sorry, I can get off the topic to something a little bit later.
Believe it or not, DrWhiteCat is we did the hour already. We're coming up on 9 o'clock. It flew by. It was really great. I think everybody had a good time. But to recap, the best way to deliver it, you decompress, you have your support system. Video games are great. Therapy, ShoreHouse is very pro therapy. I get a therapist myself. I should give him a call. But yeah, it's definitely a very emotionally charged system. But it sounds like your girlfriend's always there helping out. Before we end the hour, did you want to give her a little shout out too? Because it sounds like she's doing a lot of good for you over there, DrWhiteCat.
Sure. Her name is Katie. She works as a preschool teacher. She's not into gaming, not into streaming. So she really has no clue what's going on half the time when I'm talking about video games. But she at least listens and pretends and at least shows interest in it.
There you go, because she's interested in you. You play a lot of different video games, DrWhiteCat. I see you on there. We're now, like I said, we started with Sea of Thieves. We did Minecraft. You got the Persona games now, and you're playing Disney Speedstorm. Really enjoyed the ShoreShow. So did I. It was a lot of fun. Real quick, I threw the follow up there so they could follow you. Go over your streaming schedule with you so they can know where to catch you.
Oh, sorry. Well, I didn't quite catch what the last
Your schedule was. There, your streaming schedule. When can we see DrWhiteCat on stream?
Oh, so So my normal streaming schedule is on Tuesdays, Fridays, 8:30 to 11 Eastern Standard Time. That's because Tuesday and Fridays are the days where I work in the afternoons, so I've got plenty of time for that. I also stream every other Thursday when I'm not working, and sometimes some pop-up streams on the weekends depending on what I got going on.
Yeah, over at Streamers United, you've been running this community streaming game. So every couple of weeks, you'll have a new game. Invite the community on us. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so that was an idea that I had back in, was that February? I don't remember if that was January or February, where I would, and yes, Sparty, it is in the mornings. No, she doesn't watch in the mornings. She doesn't watch at all. She's at school at 8:30 to 11. Sorry. So that was an idea that I just had because I was like, well, we've got Streamers United. It's always a good thing to try to spread out and try to promote each other's channels, and what better way to promote each other's channels than to come together. So the first week that we did it was an Among Us stream because I was like, yeah, that's a good party game. Most people already have Among Us. It's free to play. People are familiar with it. So that was that was a pretty good time. It was a good time. We invited some people. I think for the most part, the most consistent people for that have been Stealth Science and Mickey.
Oh, they're great.
And then lately, I've gotten a good bit from Eris Pothos. Other people have popped in. I mean, Disbound's been in a couple times. Lunary. You've popped in once or twice.
Sure.
Sardor has been in. So, for the most part, initially the plan was doing it every other week, but now I've downgraded it to just the first Saturday of the month, so that way people can only have to dedicate maybe one Saturday that they would normally be doing something else, and I try to spread it out across communities so even people that aren't in Streamers United, that aren't really that aren't known members of the streaming tree, I just reach out to them like, hey, I'm doing this event. Do you want to be involved? If so, this is the time. This is the place. That's how Eris Pothos joined into Streamers United, and that's just So I just thought that was a good idea. Nice. Trying to, expand the streaming tree. Let the branches spread.
Yeah, that's the idea, and I really love it. I support the idea. I always try to stop by when you guys do it, and you get a really great crowd in there. But like I said, we did the hour. We're here at 9 o'clock already. So I want to ask you one last time if there's anything that you wanted to say. I hope you enjoyed your time at the ShoreShow here. But if there's any last thing that you wanted to touch on, now would be the time, DrWhiteCat.
So one thing I would like to touch on, and it's fitting that's the last thing that I would say in this little interview, because it's also the last thing I really ever want to talk about at work, is finances. Unfortunately, the cost of veterinary medicine has been increasing as people expect more from us. We're expecting closer to human grade medicine. So unfortunately, the cost of things have increased because we're getting more equipment, getting more sophisticated testing. And so you really need to make sure that you have some way of paying for it. So I recommend everyone have yourself some sort of savings account. Pet insurance exists, but it mostly functions as a reimbursement plan. It is not like human health insurance where the clinic bills the insurance company and then the insurance company pays the clinic. It's you pay the clinic, submit your claim, and the insurance company will reimburse you. So either way, you still need to have savings so that you can support owning your animal. For certain breeds of dogs, I even say, however much money you paid for this dog,
okay,
you need to be sure to pay at least that much every single year of its life.
That's a good benchmark.
So that, because my least favorite thing is when finances get in the way of medicine. So because as much as we can work around work around finances, but unfortunately, at least in my clinic, we don't typically do payment plans because too many people have burned us for us to, put ourselves out there. So a couple bad apples spoiled the bunch. And also, Ghost is right next to me. I'm gonna see if I can grab her.
Let's go, Ghost.
There we go. There's the Ghost.
Let's hear it for Ghost. Emojis in the chat, everybody. I'm so glad Ghost got to make an appearance. That puts the capper on it, no doubt. Yep. Look at all that.
Yeah, so there's my Ghost. This is the white cat of DrWhiteCat. But anyway, thanks for having me, John New. It was nice. I hope everyone learned something from me today, that it wasn't a horrible experience and depressing, as I depressingly talked about how some of my cases go bad. But sorry, there's cat hair floating all around me right now.
Look, now you did it. Now you did it.
Sorry. All right.
Good Ghost.
Anyway.
But yeah, no, I had a great time. Chat was great in it. You guys were fantastic, asking questions, getting interested in it. It was fascinating. It was fascinating, a lot of the stuff that we touched on. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on, and I really enjoyed the hour. I'm glad you did too.
Yep. The Shore Show's a good idea. You should keep it going.
Yeah.
And I would love to see someone else that's in chat up on this big red couch next week or whatever the next time you do the Shore Show is.
Yeah. It's a comfy couch, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Feels almost like my chair at home.
Beautiful Dr. Whitecat. Guys, emojis in the chat for Dr. Whitecat. Thank him for coming out here, for being the entertainment for the last hour. It was a really great time.